Hello fellow readers and readresses. Did you know that my book buying ban is over? And yes, I know this is an Unhaul video, but just give me a second. I'm setting something up. So, my book buying ban of over a year is over, and I already have a rather sizable list of books that I would like to acquire. But looking at my bookshelves, there's not enough space to fit a postcard, much less something more sizable like an actual book or 17, which means that it's time to get rid of some dead weight. Hence, this Unhaul challenge. If you haven't watched my first video on the topic, you should. But what I generally do here is I pick a few books which I'm not sure I would like to keep, I read 20 to 50 pages from each, and then based on what I read, I decide whether to unhaul them or to keep them. And today we're doing just that, but only with Illumicrate books. If you're not familiar with Illumicrate, it's a monthly subscription box that comes with a number of reading-themed items and a limited special edition of a book selected by the Illumicrate team. I was subscribed to them for nearly 2 years, but last year decided to cancel my subscription because I started to realize that I couldn't care less for the majority of the books that they pick. Now, that's not to say that the books are necessarily bad, they simply aren't for me. I have already reviewed a number of them, though a long time ago, and gotten rid of a sizable chunk, but there are still a few left, and today we'll go through them. We have The Sun and the Void by Gabriela Romero Lacruz, Witch King by Martha Wells, The Luminaries by Susan Dennard, Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh, and Red Scholar's Wake by Aliette du Bodard. I don't know anything about these books besides their general genre and the fact that most, if not all of them, are likely romances masquerading as something else. And I am basing this on my previous experience with reading Illumicrate books, as well as their general aesthetic. What I did last time was to read the synopsis first, but this time I think I won't even do that, and instead will opt for going in fully blind, and then will try and provide you with my personal synopsis once I've done some reading. As before, I have put all of those titles on a spinner wheel in order to randomize the reading order and make it a little more fun. So what I'll do is spin the wheel, read the book that comes up. Once I'm done with it, I'll spin again, rinse and repeat until we're done with all 5 books. And I think that's enough for the intro, so let's get to spinning the thing. Alright, let's do it. The Sun and the Void by Gabriela Romero Lacruz is a very big and very beautiful book, and based on the aesthetic, I'm gonna guess is a young adult fantasy romance. So let's get to reading it and see if I'm correct in my guess. Okay, so I'm done with chapter 1, and so far, to be honest, I'm not very impressed with the author's writing. I don't know if she's a newbie, but it kind of feels that way based on her writing style. She uses a lot of overcomplicated and overly long descriptions for things that are completely unnecessary. She also uses a lot of unnatural similes and adjectives that don't really belong. There's also quite a bit of editing mistakes, like at one point she said unable, able, and that's not the only one, but just an example that came to mind. Overall, I don't find the author's writing to be very clear, and despite her overly long descriptions, I end up somehow struggling to imagine the scene because I think there's lack of direction and clarity in the author's writing in general. I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly, but for the 10 pages that chapter 1 spans, I found myself constantly being pulled out of the story. I'm gonna continue reading right now and be back in another 10 pages. Okay, so chapter 2. So far we follow 2 different girls. One of them is running from a place where she used to live and has been treated kind of like a slave. Then one day she found a letter from her estranged grandmother, and she went on this very dangerous journey through mountains to find her, and she finds her, but on the way gets attacked by some monsters. And then in the second chapter we follow another girl that's very unsatisfied with the life that she lives and the way she's been treated, and she's trying to find who her father is because she has absolutely no information about him. And I'm giving up on this book. Honestly, the writing style is so uncomfortable to read. It's just so robotic and unnatural and repetitive. There are all these unnecessary irrelevant descriptions and these overly long family names and family trees that I don't know if they're going to be relevant later on, but if they are, I don't care. It's just physically uncomfortable for me to read this story, and I can't imagine to go through over 500 pages of this. It's just not gonna happen. I'm giving up on the book, even though it's very, very pretty. Okay, so we're done with one book. I'm definitely unhauling this one, and even though I'm sad to get rid of such a beautiful book, I am happy that I'm gonna open some space for new ones that I'm gonna enjoy more. Now, let's do spin number 2. Some Desperate Glory. Okay, Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. Based on the cover, I'm gonna assume that this is an adult sci-fi novel, and we're about to find out very soon. I'm kind of curious, so let's go into reading it. Okay, so I'm done with chapter 1 from Some Desperate Glory, and so far, yes, it's definitely a sci-fi, and more specifically, a space opera. I can't yet decide whether this is young adult or adult, but we're following humanity after the Earth has been destroyed some time ago by some alien race, and now they're living in a space station, sort of, which orbits a very weak star. So humanity lives on that space station, and they have a very rigid structure in order to be able to survive. We follow this girl that's part of this academy, if I can call it that. She's in training, they have different factions, and she is hoping and she's kind of sure that she's gonna be in the fighter faction because she's the best of all of them. We follow her, and I'm guessing a group of her friends. We'll see. So far, I like the setting, but I'm not sure yet about the characters. I'm gonna read some more and come back with the rest of my opinion. Okay, so I'm at chapter 5, which is exactly 60 pages in, and so far, as I mentioned, I like the world building and I like the setup, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not enjoying myself because I kind of can't stand the characters. There's another reason as well, and I'm gonna talk about it in a second, but mostly, I just can't stand these characters. I think she wants me to like them, but she makes this mistake that I think a lot of authors make nowadays, and that is to expect me to simply like somebody because they're suffering, because they're a victim of something, and that, while certainly can be something to empathize with, is definitely not a good enough reason in and of itself to like somebody. Because guess what? That's not uncommon. Good people and bad people, everybody suffers. Some suffer more, some suffer less, but all of us do. If you think that only good people suffer, then you know nothing about life and you shouldn't be telling stories to anybody above the age of 9. In order for me to like and root for someone, they have to have likable, admirable qualities, something to make me want to spend time with them, even if only in a story. And here, what I can see is just a bunch of one-dimensional, rude hotheads. On top of that, while the book has some good themes about equality and acceptance, among other things, they're executed so bluntly and with no nuance whatsoever, making them feel like a cudgel that the author is using to beat you over the head with. Frankly, it feels patronizing, like I'm being lectured on something I already agree with, and it makes it not only unpleasant to read the book, but kind of insulting as well. As I think I mentioned, it takes me out of the atmosphere because it doesn't feel like the author had a story to tell, but rather a position that she's trying to make clear and now is using this book as a vehicle for it. And I'm not saying that these themes and subjects aren't important, but they have been done before. You're not doing anything new, so if you're gonna do it, try to make it maybe original, or at least weave it seamlessly into the story. So for those reasons, I am not enjoying this book whatsoever, and unfortunately, I'm going to unhaul it as well. Okay, so we are 2 books down, and both of them are gonna go, and in any other circumstance, this would be a bad news, but given the current situation, I think this is a great success. Also, excuse my voice if it cracks, I'm starting to lose it again for some reason. Now, let's go to spin number 3. The Luminaries. The Luminaries by Susan Dennard is such a pretty book with the gold leaves and the creepy skull and all of that. I really like the aesthetic. You know, I used to really hate orange, but now I find it very pleasing to look at. Anyway, I think this will be a young adult fantasy romance, which makes me suspect that I won't much like it, but let's give it a try and see. So, I read about 30 pages from the Luminaries and I did it in a very nice coffee place, but I didn't film much there because I feel sort of uncomfortable doing that, because not only is it loud, but also it's kind of rude. You know, people are there with their families to enjoy a nice weekend, and setting up a camera where you can catch them accidentally, I don't find that to be a nice thing, so I try to avoid it whenever I can. But let's talk about the book. First of all, a very good beginning, very bombastic. The author starts with this kind of a prologue-y thingy that's called The Nightmare, and it's less than a page long, and she managed to set the scene and the atmosphere with just 2 paragraphs, if that, and I think that's a very admirable skill. Now, what you need to know about this book is that it's definitely a young adult fantasy. Our main character is a 16-year-old girl called Winnie Wednesday. The setting is kind of cool. We have what is essentially a small town that is located next to a weird forest with a sleeping spirit which produces nightmares. These nightmares manifest into the real world and are being chased by the population of this town, which is 7 different clans, one for each day of the week. Our main character Winnie is part of the Wednesday clan, which are currently kind of outcasts because her father turned out traitor 4 years ago. Upon the discovery of his treachery, he left, and now Winnie, her mom, and her brother are the ones who are facing the consequences. Winnie just turned 16 and she wants to become a hunter, and apparently that happens when you turn 16. You have to take trials, and she's very excited about it, but she's kind of doing it in secret. There's definitely a lot of young adult angst to prove yourself. There are some lost friendships, some new friendships, all the YA goodness, and I really like the pacing of the story. I think it's perfect for the type of story that it is. The author has a very nice writing style, and I would definitely recommend this to people who like YA. That being said, I keep on asking myself the question, do I really want to invest time into reading this, being that there are so many other books that I'm so much more excited about reading and that are going to have a bigger impact on me? And I think the honest answer here is no. So while I think this is a good YA fantasy book and I would recommend it to people who are into YA, I am still going to unhaul it, despite how pretty it is. So, 3 books down and 3 books are out, and we only have 2 left, so let's do spin number 4, which will be actually the last spin, since once we select the one, we'll know which one will be the last one. This was a rather unnecessary explanation. Anyway, spin number 4. Red Schollar's Wake. The Red Schollar's Wake by Aliette Bodard. I'm assuming this is going to be an adult sci-fi romance, and I'm basing this on the 2 fully grown women holding hands on this spaceship's deck. But let's dive in and see if it's actually going to be the case. What? We have a spaceship who is married to a woman? We are veering into some rather weird territories, which give me flashbacks to a certain jet plane romance. From what I read so far, we're following a woman who's an engineer and a bondsperson, whatever that means, who's been taken capture after her spaceship got invaded by space pirates. Also, before that, she seems to have abandoned a friend of hers to die, which I'm sure will play into the drama later on. The spaceship she's been imprisoned on is sentient, which I'm given to understand is not uncommon in this universe, and said spaceship is employing a woman-shaped avatar that's made of something that's not really matter. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It also used to be married to a woman whose name was the Red Scholar and who allegedly died. And so now this spaceship proposes a fake marriage contract to this imprisoned lady after seeing something in her eyes, I suppose, and offers her protection in exchange. And you know what? I'm not even gonna attempt to read 20 pages because this book couldn't possibly be more clearly not for me. So despite the author's good from what I've seen so far writing style and the nice space setting, this is gonna be a no from me. Unhaul. Please excuse this terrible lighting, but I don't have a better one right now, and I had a very busy day, so I can only film at this precise and godly hour. We are done with 4 of the books, and those 4 are gonna go. We only have the one left, and that is Witch King by Martha Wells, which is the only book on this list I have higher hopes for because it actually was on my 2023 most anticipated releases, which means that I have read the synopsis before it came out, and I was actually excited for it. Now granted, since then, I have actually forgotten entirely what the synopsis was, and I even had the book on my TBR once, read a chapter, and then never finished it because I wasn't in the mood for this type of book at the time. And to be honest, I don't remember a single thing from that one chapter that I read, so this is gonna be a brand new reading experience for me. If I remember correctly, this is supposed to be a grimdark fantasy, but don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. And also, of all the books today, I think this one is probably the ugliest, which is obviously irrelevant, but I just find it funny. Also, I have read from this author before. She writes this sci-fi series Murderbot, and I have read the first 3 novellas from it, and I quite enjoyed them. The third one, not so much, but the first 2 were quite good, and I generally like her writing and character building, which is another reason why I think I might actually like this one. So, without further ado, let's get to reading. Alright, so I read a chapter from Witch King, and I have completely forgotten what I read before. I couldn't recall a single thing. Imagine how little concentration I actually exhibited last time. Anyway, so we're following this demon necromancer kind of person who's, I'm assuming, the Witch King. And the story starts with him waking up in a coffin after his physical body has been murdered. His special skill is that he can steal life from other people and he can possess other people's bodies. So he wakes up in this glass coffin because a lower level sorcerer is coming with other people to steal his powers or something like that. And our main character promptly kills everybody except for a girl that was brought as a sacrifice. He then starts to investigate where he's been imprisoned, and it turns out it's this island that looks like a tower, and he's not the only one imprisoned there. A very close friend of his is also imprisoned in another coffin. He finds her, frees her, and they start asking the girl questions to figure out where this island is and how long has it been since they've been imprisoned. And that is pretty much where we are right now. I'm gonna continue with my reading, and I'm gonna come back in maybe 10 more pages. Also, if you're wondering why I'm drinking red wine on a hot summer night, it's because I already had it opened and it's very good. And mind your business. Cheers. So, I read another chapter, and the mystery of this book is starting to get much deeper already. I am super curious to find out more where the friends of these people are, who took them, how they did it, what's the reason for all of this, and I am really enjoying the writing style of the author as always. So, I am definitely going to keep this one. Matter of fact, I kind of want to read it right now, all of it, but we'll see. Either way, the book is staying. Thus ends my second Unhaul reading challenge, and out of 5 books, 4 will be unhauled. As such, I think we have enough empirical data to confirm beyond any shadow of a doubt that Illumicrate books simply aren't for me. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and please let me know which, if any, of these books could be interesting for you to read, and whether you agree with my assessment of them or not. Please feel free to disagree openly. I won't be offended. Thank you so much for watching, and if you would like to see more of me hauling or unhauling books, check out this playlist. Bye.